Okay, we're going to talk about exporting objects and motion from Lightwave into Vue. And the first thing we're going to take a look at is your camera and lighting options in Lightwave and being able to export them to Vue. Now, if you notice up here, I have this plugin loaded, the Vue synchronization plugin. Now, this is loaded in your synchronization plugin folder on your Vue CD. And there are plugins for 3D Studio Max, Maya, and Lightwave is also in there. So you want to go ahead and load that plugin. And I've also gone ahead and worked it into our interface here. And I've put it up in the top so that no matter where I'm at, I can access this plugin. Now the way to do that, if you don't know how to do it, just go to Edit, Edit Menu Layout, and we can expand plugins and go all the way down to the bottom and select that Vue plugin. And then I just went ahead and dragged it underneath our help menu. And as you can see, that added another one. So we'll just go ahead and delete that. But now you can see our plugin is loaded in. What you also want to do is go ahead and close out layout and then open it back up again whenever you load a plugin. And that way will make sure that it updates your configuration files in case Lightwave happens to crash. Then you don't have to go in and load those plugins again. Now this Vue plugin right here will actually entirely synchronize your camera and light with Vue. And for the camera, you have the option of synchronizing your focal length, so the zoom. So if we open up our camera properties here and take a look at our zoom factor, this will synchronize with Vue along with our motion blur settings. So in order to access our motion blur settings, we'll actually have to change our anti-aliasing up a bit, but then we can set it to normal, and our blur length, we can change it to whatever it is we want, and that'll actually affect Vue. And you can also send up envelopes for that, and those will also be translated. So if I go ahead and create a 60-second animation, and I'm going to start out actually looking in the camera view here, and we're going to move it up. We're going to take a look at our zoom, and I'm just going to zoom out a bit, open up the envelope tab, and after 60 seconds, or 60 frames, sorry, I'm going to go ahead and add a key, and go ahead and just edit that so that we can see a drastic change. So now if we look at our envelope, we can see that zoom is changing. And we're going to leave our blur length. We're going to bring it down to about 50. And then we can go ahead and turn that off. And go back to our perspective view. And now we want to edit our camera motion. So I'm just going to position ourselves in our perspective view and go ahead and just start moving this around. So at 60 frames, I want to bring it up and out a little. And then I'm going to go ahead and actually rotate it. And now if you have a scroll button on your mouse, you can actually scroll through your move and rotate with that button. And I'm going to just go ahead and pull it down. So now if we take a look at our motion through our camera view, we can see that it's kind of zooming in and we're moving upward. So it's kind of a neat little motion. We're going to take a look at our distant light here. And after 60 frames, I want to go ahead and rotate that all the way around here. And now you can see that light is almost a 360-degree rotation. And now we have both our light and our camera animated. We can also go ahead and move this light if we wanted to. Of course, this is a distant light, so it doesn't really matter its position too much. Actually, we created a key at 59. I'm going to go ahead and delete that. And that was our rotation key, so I'll have to go back and change that, of course. And we'll kind of set it right there. And now we got that motion of the camera and our light. If we take a look into this view, we're kind of going over that light. Alright, so now what we're going to do is hit the vusync plugin and go ahead, and we have, as you can see, three items listed, and that is our render camera, camera, and light. Now our render camera is just our camera, so if we select render or just camera as well, we don't really need to because we have our render camera. There's only one camera in the scene. And then you also want to check your light. What we also have here is our frames. Since we have 60 frames in the animation, that will show up, so our duration of 2. But also note that this is actually reflected upon in our render options and not in the timeline. So if I close this out, you have to hit the escape key to close that out. If I change this up to 150 frames and go ahead and hit that plugin again, it's still going to say 60. So if I hold down Control Shift right mouse click and go to render options, it's our last frame that counts. So if we change that to 150, and now pull up that plugin, you can see it changes to 150. And you also can't edit these options, so you have to leave those the way they are and set it up within layout. So set that back to 60, go back to our render options, and change that back to 60. And now we can pull this plugin back up. We're going to select our light and our render camera, and click the Synchronize Data button, and it's going to say synchronization file created, operation successful. Now I'm going to click OK. And now, if you don't have Vue open, you're going to want to open it up, or if you do have it open, just switch over to it. That's what we're going to do right now. Okay, once we switch over to Vue, you can see it says a new synchronization file is available. Would you like to load this new synchronization file data? Yeah, pretty much. So we're going to click yes. And that's automatically going to assign our camera. So if we open up our timeline and take a look at that 60 frames, you can see our camera is moving exactly like it did in Lightwave. Now, if you look at our light, that doesn't seem to be moving at all. Well, the first thing we need to do is turn off point at camera. And the next thing we need to do is assign the synchronization data from that light to this specific light. So what we want to do is go to this last tab over here, and under motion, we're going to select synchronized, and then we're going to select the light, and it's automatically going to load in those settings. And as you can see, our light is moving across the screen and rotating just like it did in Lightwave. So that's kind of a neat little thing you can do if you're going to be synchronizing your scenes, especially if you're like compositing and things like that. So depending on which software you start your animation in, or where the main part of your software is, you can export both cameras and lights from both softwares into the other. Okay, and there's one other thing I want to show you too. If you wanted to animate an object in Vue based on data you have in Lightwave, you can do that as well. I'm going to go ahead and select a new scene for Vue, and just a standard sky. I'm not going to save, and we're going to go ahead and switch back to Lightwave. And now I'm going to go ahead and clear this scene, and we're going to add a point light, and click OK. Now the reason I'm adding a point light is because this synchronization data is specifically for lights and cameras. It does not detect objects. But we can use a point light and then apply an object to this point light's data within Vue. So I'm going to do another 60 frame animation. I'm going to go ahead and pull this light up, and then go ahead and just move it over and just give it a little bit of crazy motion here, just kind of move it around randomly, nothing specific, just so that we can see that motion. And what we can also do is add a little bit of rotation if we wanted. And now we have that rotation throughout. And go ahead and now click Vusynchronizer. And this is the light 2. So we want to select light 2. We're going to turn off our render camera. Now also keep in mind that you can only synchronize once. So if you want to update your scene in Vue and add this like point light to the scene we already had, you're actually going to have to reload everything. So I'm going to select light 2 because this is the only thing we're going to be using. We're not going to worry about the camera or anything else because we haven't really done anything with them. And I'm going to click the Synchronize Data button. Click OK, hit Escape to close this out once it's selected, and we're going to go back to Vue. And we get this again, and I'm going to click Yes, and now we have our data successfully retrieved. And now this doesn't affect anything in the scene just yet because there's nothing really matching those attributes. We're going to display our timeline again. And now go ahead and add a sphere. I'm going to scale the sphere down just a little. And actually, we're going to go ahead and replace this with a box. So right mouse click, replace by, keep object, proportions, and hit cube. And this way, we can see the rotation. With a sphere, we wouldn't really be able to, except for in wireframe mode. So I'm going to go ahead and select this box now. And if we go up to this last tab, we can select Synchronized, select that light, and now our object is assigned to that path that we had made with our point light. So that's a really neat way to animate your objects from Lightwave into Vue. Of course, it's You can't really use inverse kinematics or anything like that, but there is still a lot you can do with it for synchronizing certain things. And of course, our grid systems are off a little, so your proportions, you'll have to watch those a little. But that's a way to animate our lights from Lightwave and our camera from Lightwave and bring them into Vue. Another thing, we can go ahead and export from Lightwave our objects. So we're going to go back to Lightwave, and I'm going to go ahead and clear this scene out and open up Modeler. Alright, and now there's one thing you really have to keep in mind for exporting objects into Vue, and that is the textures. The surfaces on a Lightwave object have to be UV mapped. So I'm going to show you exactly what's going to happen if we make something and export it into Vue without a UV map. So I'm just going to create a box here, just a simple box, nothing special. And we're just going to get a surface name of box. And then we'll just go ahead and hit S and save that. And then go ahead and send this object into layout. We'll stay in the perspective view. And I actually already have an image map loaded, and I'm going to show you what I'm going to do with that. So if we go to our image editor, I can show you that texture we have loaded in here. And this is actually quite large, so I'm going to scale this down a bit, 25%. You can see we just have black on the outside and just a little bit of blue on the inside. Go ahead and close that out. And now typically, if we were working with something like this and we wanted to apply it to all the faces, we'd pull up our surface editor, go to our color map, and select our cubic, and then go to grab that image map, click automatic size, use texture, and now you can see that is applied to our surface. So you would think that would work in Vue. The problem is our image maps don't exactly load correctly in Vue, and that's because mostly because of the grid system and the way different things are set up. And this is more stretched out, and there is no automatic sizing feature in Vue as well, so it'd be a lot more difficult to even replicate this within Vue. So we have to create UV maps. So I'm going to go ahead and just actually save this really quick and load it up into Vue just to show you what will happen to this object in Vue. But I'll go ahead and render this really quick just to show, because we had some display errors in there on the back sides. Go ahead and just render that frame just to show you. Oh, got to move the camera. Select our camera, move it up, and go ahead and render that just to show you how it looks. We can see we still have that black bar on the outside. Of course, we have a black background, so it's blending in, but it still gives you an idea. And now we're going to save this and bring it into Vue. Okay, I've imported it in, and all we had to do for that was just go File, Import, Object, and then we selected it from our folder. And you can take a look and see that our image map does not match up. It doesn't look anything like it did in layout. And if we actually take a look at our surface for it, you'll see that our image scale has been scaled down to 1 by 1, so it's square and it's not stretched out, but we don't have an automatic sizing feature. We could play around with this and go ahead, actually, just like no for that. Click escape. We just don't want to have to take forever to make those changes to match it up. And the way you really have to do it is you have to use UV maps. So if we use a UV map, and I'll go ahead, and I already have one ready. I'm going to select new because we made some keyframes on that camera. I'm going to go ahead and import object. And you can see with this one, we've already gone ahead and created a UV map for it. And you can see that it's perfect. And we have not made any edits to this in Vue whatsoever. And it's all based on a UV map. And you can see right here, we have created that UV map specifically. Now, if you have to use those features in Lightwave, like automatic size, faces, or well, cubic mapping and things like that, cylindrical mapping, spherical, there are ways to bake your image from those standard mapping to a UV map. And I'm going to show you how to do that right now. So we're going to go ahead and delete this out, file new, just to clear out our scene here in Vue, and then switch back to layout. And we want to keep the same object, we just need to make modifications to it, of course. So we want to go over to Modeler, and now we're going to create our UV map for it. Now, depending on the complexity of the object, of course, it's going to take a little longer for certain things, but I'm just going to show you how to do it with this cube. And basically what we're going to be doing is just letting Lightwave bake the textures onto a UV map. So we're going to start out with the T down here for a texture map, or UV, and we're going to select New, and we just keep it named, we'll just call it Texture UV Box. And I want to use cylindrical on the Y, and go ahead and click OK. Now we're going to switch to our UV texture and take a look at it, and have a little bit of an offset here. So I'm going to go ahead, hit T on the keyboard to move it, and kind of move it into place. Of course, I could also hit H and just stretch it in, and then also stretch those sides so they're kind of in proportion. Another thing we also need to make sure we do is unweld the points. So we're going to go to Detail and Unweld. And now this is unwelded all of our points so that, oops, if I go and select just this corner right here, you can see we have 3 points. So I'm going to go ahead now and select this top polygon and Control T. And up in this UV map view, we can just kind of move out this top polygon in proportion, just kind of laying it out as we would if we were actually unfolding a box. And we'll grab that bottom polygon, Control T, and just drag those points out. And now this doesn't have to be perfect, because Lightwave's going to make all of our adjustments as far as stretching everything out the way it needs to be and making everything proportionate. Go ahead and deselect that. And now we hit M on the keyboard to merge all of our points back together. And now we can hit Save and switch back to Layout. Now we need to bring up our surface editor, and we're going to keep all of our same settings. We're not going to change this to a UV map just yet, but we're going to go to our shaders, and we are going to add Surface Baker. We double click on Surface Baker. We're going to deselect everything except Bake Color. We want to bake the entire object onto an image, and then we can set our image resolution, which is going to be square, and I'm going to go ahead and set that up to 1024. And I'm just going to make it a JPEG. And then we can also set anti-aliasing or not. We're not really going to need it for this object. And then we need to set our image base name and where we want to save it. Okay, once you have that saved, just hit the X here, close it out, and then we can go ahead and either hit F9 or render frame. And it says no UV map is selected, and that's actually because we didn't select our UV map. So we have to go back into our Surface Baker, and right above image resolution we have to select that texture UV box. Close it out again, and now we can render. And now it's rendering. As you can see, it just popped up right there. I'm going to continue. And now if we bring back and go back a layer here, you can see we have our UV map rendered. And I'll just make it a little bit bigger so you can see it. But you can see it automatically made those adjustments to how kind of distorted those top polygons were. But now we have a UV map that we can apply to the object. So we'll close this out. We're going to remove, so right mouse click and remove the Surface Baker from the shaders. And go back to Basic, and under the color, we want to change it from cubic to UV. Grab our UV map, and then we also need to load in that image. Okay, and now we're going to click Use, or we can turn off pixel blending too, depending on the size of the texture. I'm just going to leave that turned off. Click Use Texture, and then we can close that out, and now we have our UV textured box. And we want to go back to Modeler, and we're going to hit S to save, and now we can switch over to Vue, load it in, and you'll see that everything's looking okay. Alright, we have it imported in, and as you can see, everything Looks just as it did in Lightwave, and everything seems to be exactly how it should be. Of course, we have a little bit of stretching up on the top right here, but that's just because we're using an elongated image on the top and the bottom as well, but we could change that if we wanted to. But this is pretty much the only way to get your textures from Lightwave into Vue without having to retexture them in Vue, which of course can be quite difficult considering it doesn't have some of the capabilities that Lightwave has when it comes to certain mapping features. But this works for any object, so anything that has a UV map texture on it, you just go ahead and load those in, and those will work fine. And if they don't have a UV, all you gotta do is just create one, and then you can add those UVs to the image, save it, and load it into Vue, and you'll be able to use them.